my little kung fu junkies, to
What to watch now?
where we talk about what's streaming on Netflix right now. And in today's episode, we are talking about 2004's Kung Fu Hustle! Written, directed, and starring Stephan Chow. Yes, the main protagonist, Sing, that's Stephan. He can act, he can write, he can direct, ladies, he can do it all! You have to admit, that's pretty fucking impressive because, I don't know, I always think that when I see someone who's actually talented at singing and genuinely really talented guitar, not like just strumming your basic power chords, it's like, damn, gifted twice, touched twice. Well, this man was triple touched, which I kind of stopped saying touch, creepy. But Stephan did an amazing job. Now, Kung Fu Hustle is a classic. It really is, but it's one of those secret classics. Like, when people make the list of movies that you should watch, the top ones, this most likely will not be in it, unfortunately, because we keep talking about the same fucking classics time and time and time again, and there's a bunch of them in there that people love and adore, but because they're not spoken about enough, they're not like on the tip of your mind. You know what I mean? They're not at the top, the forefront that you let everyone know about it and go check it out and watch it. But you probably honestly enjoy and rewatch this movie more than the other one. So that's another reason why to love it. Now, the thing that's so great about this is it's probably one of the rarest movies in the last 20 years that is very influential. Now, I can't confirm this. I haven't heard anyone be like, when I watch this movie, this is why I chose to do cinematography in this way or something. But when I was watching it, I mean, I've like the first opening scene, the very long panning shot, the way it kind of captured the setting in a very particular way, it felt very James Wan. There were some moments and character development or just like introductions that felt very Quentin Tarantino and Kill Bill. And I couldn't help but wonder, like, man, I can't think of any movies in the last 20 years that have inspired people. Many people will say it, like, especially after Alfred Hitchcock was a thing, that there wasn't a lot left to do in the game. You know what I mean? Like, ooh, you spin the camera like this to create this effect, or this makes you feel small and afraid in comparison with the lighting. There's not a ton that really stands out. I mean, I'm sure they're out there for sure. I'm not very well versed in them, but I wouldn't say they're so revolutionary that they just kind of invented something totally new, so to speak. I guess you could argue this movie maybe didn't, but I don't know. I mean, I saw things in it that are now a little more commonplace, but I think he might have been the first, which is kind of saying something because that some of the things I mentioned before, like with James Wan, Quentin Tarantino, and stuff like that, these moments are what define their movies. So to say, like, all your favorite parts of other movies are compiled into one, I mean, like, fuck yeah. Another reason to love this movie is it's a kung fu movie, of course. I love a good kung fu martial arts movie, for sure. But there's like a million of them. And some are better than others. So you have to ask yourself, what makes a great kung fu martial arts movie? You know, is it something very serious, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon? Is it something very silly and funny, like the movie I recently covered, The Legend of the Drunken Master? You should really go watch that and go check out my episode on it. It is, holy shit, I just have to take a moment to, like, geek out. Jackie Chan, once you watch that movie, is, like, you realize why he is the king. Truly, to this day, when people work with him, a lot of people, like stuntmen and stuff like that, or people who are just working on a movie via like doing karate or whatever, I've seen in interviews them being like, oh, I'm just so lucky to work with him. Even to this day, you learn something new from him. He truly is a master of what he does. But then that goes forward. Do you want something really realistic like that? Because that's all his acting. There's nothing over-exasperated. He's just a talented man. Or do you want something kind of almost surreal, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or many other fighting movies where they're kind of flying for a longer period of time. Their moves are more exasperated to create action. I would argue, how about all of them? And I think Steven thought the same thing because this movie has romance, fighting, folklore, memorable characters, plenty of twists, villains, gangs. It's probably like the top for me kung fu movie that has like the best choreography, not choreography, cinematography, surreal powers, and an underdog story. Truly, because that's like a common thing that happens in a lot of karate movies. The idea of like, don't underestimate me. Look what I can do. But I think it matches beautifully with the art and the skill of being able to fight because most of the time the argument they're making is no matter what weapon they're using or without a weapon, the true weapon is who they are in the inside. And again, that goes to the idea of martial arts because martial arts is all about like within you and tapping your potential, connecting to that spiritual side of yourself and kind of being one with your body and taking it to its limit. So it all beautifully works out. And I think this is the funnest and you'll just have an amazing time. So let's go down and kind of break down how amazing this is because two things that really stand out to me about this movie that I think makes it what it is the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful transitions between introductions and plot development. Like when we get introduced to a character or what they are capable of doing, you kind of immediately are like, oh, I didn't anticipate that, or this is so memorable. There's a lot of like, I swear every single introduction or way something develops is like so iconic, and I haven't really seen it done again in its goofiness and over the topness. And that's another thing too. You kind of have to sit here by the end of the movie and go, how the hell did we get here? And they take you in a somewhat logical progression, but overall it is one wackadoo thing over the other by kind of fate. It makes you wonder, and I don't want to give away anything yet, but the ending being very fate oriented, it kind of makes you sit back and be like, hey, maybe all this silliness was meant to be, which makes it even deeper in its movie because you hear what I'm saying. The other thing that stands out to me are the characters' names, or rather lack of, because they do have names, but even like I had to look up who the main character's name was because I don't really remember him being called Sing. And then even the other characters are actually just known as landlord, landlady. And that's something that's notable to me because in a lot of movies in general, it's so important that you know the main character's name. That's like the most important part. In fact, they want to build a whole franchise around it. You get what I'm saying. But I think it says a lot about a movie when they're saying names are not important. You just need to get the impression of what I am trying to say. The story, the actions, what they look like, what they personify is more important than their identity. Their identity is their actions. And again, that goes back to that idea of like what martial arts represents. What you do is what makes up who you are as a person. So do you see that like very, like the movie as itself, you're going to be impressed, but when you dig deeper in that way, you're like, whoa, Steven did a lot, even subtly. Okay, so the beginning is amazing. It's this one long, beautiful shot that I can't describe it any other ways, but I swear James Wan must have been like inspired by this because you see the police station, you understand what's happening, you get this great bang of violence, it's one long panning shot, you get all these mini stories in seconds, and we get introduced to a gang member picking up his wife and being and beating up the police officers, being kind of like showing his power and what a badass he is, and her acting like so nonchalant, like, yeah, I date a big bad boy, I'm used to getting everything I want type of personality. And this is like setting the tone of, okay, this is how this world works. Yes, there's police officers, but gangs kind of, to a certain degree, are controlling the major power structure. But before you can get kind of enticed by this character, and they do a really great job of building up this dynamic, you instantly are bombarded by the true gang, the Axe Gang. This horde, this giant fleet of men coming down the street on all these different sides, while people, including the police officers, are closing their gates shut, turning blind to the situation. It's very much, again, Kill Bill Crazy 88 situation, and it's so over the top to see a man come down the street with, like, I don't know, like 1,000 men towards this small group of people, this small gang, a boss, a few of his henchmen, and his lady. And they just unapologetically murder them with axes. In fact, even the woman, she begs for her life. He says, "Oh, I'll let you go," but it's a lie, only to hack her. And then you get this kind of sinister. You immediately are sucked in and believe, okay, this guy is a badass. He's a villain. He does give a bit of a spine chilling thing. But then they weirdly build up the eeriness and the suspense and this introduction by having this weird dance routine that's amazing. Like, the main boss guy's dancing with his axe in a very silly kind of drunken way, and then slowly, as they're doing the choreography, one henchman is built after the other, building a triangle formation. So we have like a boy band dance routine amongst like murder and power dynamics being set up. Like I said, you immediately have me hooked in this regard. And I'm going to point out when the 15-minute mark is, but I want to point that out because, okay, so when you are selling anything, whether it be a pitch of an idea of a movie, or you have a product, or honestly in this world, like your fucking friendship on Instagram, isn't that so true? When you go to a party, you kind of have to pitch yourself and go, I'm worth knowing, or this is worth buying, blah, 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 blah. And for me, it's really sucks when someone tells me, no, the book's great, I'm like, I'm 100 pages in and this shit's boring as shit. Oh, no, it really picks up after the first 150. Took you 150 pages to set this shit up, and and I'm not even having fun in the setup. If you can do an iconic job and carry along that magnitude of a well done like setup, like continue that energy, you have a solid movie. I mean, I guess I'm just saying you're making a great movie, but what I'm saying is a lot of people have great beginning ideas and don't know how to finish them. Stephen does. Stephen knows how to finish it. So the first 15 minutes, we get this weird, impressive dynamic with the different gang members, and we understand that they exist. But before we can kind of get caught up in all this suspense and kind of action-y darkness, we get brought to the outer edges, the more poorer districts. We learn that apparently gangs run pretty much everything, and the only people that are free from their grasp are the poorer districts. And I can't remember what the town's called. They said it's the Pigsty district, which is interesting because sometimes, I think in like the Chinese calendar, I'm pretty sure pigs represent like great fortune or something like that. So I thought that was kind of funny and ironic. I wonder if that's like a Stephen joke right there of the play on words with the idea of it calling pigsty being ironically poor, but it's technically a wealthy representation. I don't know, or maybe he's just literally talking about pigs, but whatever. So we get introduced to all these wonderful characters, and I can't explain it any other way, but you truly feel like you're staring at a set in a good way. Like, you are interested in all the goofiness from the tailor to even just seeing a snippet of the rice or I guess he wouldn't be the rice maker, the baker making bread, the landlord and the landlady being drunk, running around and getting kisses from the local, girl, potential sex worker, the landlady yelling at everyone to pay more rent. I don't know, I can't explain it. I'm not selling it the best, but for sure you will love these characters. They're amazing in their personalities, and all you need to know is that everyone lives in kind of almost like a giant makeshift building, but that's the entire town. It has 3 walls, and the landlord and landlady, and let's be real, the landlady really runs the pants in this family. They collect rent from everyone and therefore kind of own the town. And they're not like dictators about it. I would kind of consider them almost the like lovable mom and dad of the town in the way they like chastise. It's almost like dad's sneaking the kids candy, so to speak, while mom's yelling at them to go wash their hands for dinner and no dessert kind of vibe. It's very sweet. It's great. Now, then we get introduced, and we haven't even gotten introduced to the main characters yet, which is crazy. I mean, I guess technically they're all main characters, but the main protagonist, you could say. So these two idiots show up to town, and now we've already been introduced to the Axe Gang. So when they say that they're getting a haircut and they're the part of the Axe Gang, it's supposed to incite this idea of terror because we've already gotten the plot point of like, okay, they don't come to the outer edges. What are they doing here? Oh no, trouble's gonna go down. But it turns out, I like to just call them the two idiots. One, who's really the showrunner of the scam, is pretending he's the henchman of his heavier friend who has a fake drawn-on axe tattoo across his chest. And as they're getting the barbershop thing and he's threatening to be like, we're not gonna pay because we're the Axe Gang and trying to be all tough, his friend falls asleep in the middle of the scam, therefore kind of like basically the barber very quickly. By the way, the barber had his ass out to the very end. Watching the last clip, he's still got his ass out. But obviously he's pissed. He's like, you're gonna pay me for this fucking haircut, bitch. And when they get confronted by the entire town. This is again when we get this iconic scene where he keeps choosing random people out of the crowd being like, oh, I'm so tough, I'd fight any of you. But as he keeps picking people, they keep being more secretively like muscular or very tall. Even like the children are very strong, and the idea is like they could all kick his ass. What is he doing? Like he's basically talking bullshit at this point. So in a last kind of ditch effort to, like keep his bluff going, so to speak, because at this point it's revealed like he for sure is not in the Axe Gang. He's just being a little kind of con artist, and he's not even very good at it. I don't know why, but why is that always time and time again a lovable thing for us in characters? I mean, even in Disney, in like The Road to El Dorado, it's all about like unsuccessful con artists. Somehow we like love that. I guess probably because most of these con artists are not truly bad people when we get introduced to them. I'm not saying this blanketly for people who are unsuccessful con artists. I'm saying that these characters tend to be people who are only doing it because they've been slightly misguided and they truly do have a good heart. And we will later come to find, maybe that's true for this character. So Sing, our main guy, throws a firecracker behind him and he thinks he's gonna blow something up and kind of show a bang, call for help. Everyone's still calling him out. I love the landlady with her slapping him with her flip-flop. By the way, for most of the movie, she has those rollers in her hair like night and day, and all I can think is like, girl, is your hair curled enough? Are you perming it for days on end? It'll never lose that curl, or your hair's gonna fall out before then. But when he throws the firecracker, just by like freak chance or whatever, he hits an actual, is not the boss, but like you could consider him like a general. Like he seemed higher up in the Axe Gang. He hits his fedora. Comically, but very stylishly, his hair's popped out. Realistically, if firecracker hit him in the head, he'd either like be dead with a chunk of his skull on the ground, or like his hair would be balding. And it's sticking out of this fedora. Yep, even in 2004, they were trying to make fedoras happen. And, oh, by the way, this is 1940s time period, so I don't even know if fedoras were a thing. I think they were. This was for sure fedora, not that old like detective hat looking thing. Anyways, so he shows up and he's got quite a large gang, and by just perchance, he basically brings in the Axe Gang. And this is something I want to think about for one moment, that remember how they said that the Axe Gang never bothered the more poor districts because they were so busy with, like the other people in the towns, and obviously the poor districts didn't really have anything to offer? I can't help but wonder, like, so he by perchance hit a firecracker over a fence and hit him. Does that mean the Axe Gang truly was on their way and was going to bother this town nonetheless? And maybe he didn't even incite all of this drama? Maybe it was going to happen anyways, like it was on its way to happening? I don't know, just a food for thought. And also, like, what are the fucking chances? But Or was he just going to pass by this random road in the middle of nowhere? I mean, or town in the middle of nowhere. Who knows? But after he hits him, Singh covers his ass up and basically is like, "Oh, I didn't do it. These people did, and I'm like part of your gang, and they're trying to give me trouble and not listening to my orders. Like, yeah, go get revenge," which is a pretty big dick move to put on these like innocent people, considering like I know he wants to be bad, but like part of me wants to be like, dude, are you really comfortable with the idea of like the level of monstrosity that they are going to bring to these innocent people? And of course he's not thinking that shit through. But I think the other thing that makes me laugh is, guys, this is like, if you're gonna have a gang, because you never know where you're at in your life. Just kidding. But if you have a gang, maybe be aware of all of your members and not so easily get conned, because they really do think he's a part of the gang. And this is when they start to basically challenge and threaten the villagers. Now, this is the 15-minute mark. I'm telling you, this is the first 15 minutes of the movie. It's fucking crazy. In the first 15 minutes, you understand what the power dynamic and the kind of like levels, the stakes that are there. We get introduced to this lovable cast, a random town out on the edges of the city. And then we get introduced to our main protagonist, who, I mean, at this point, you don't even know he's the protagonist, but kind of all of these separate characters, if you just took them out of context, if you cut it right here at this moment, it would be something of an amazing short film, because it's like you get all these separate lives and how they're going to interweave. And a lot of people get dazzled by that type of storytelling, myself included, with how are these different people going to affect each other's lives. And the more you make them seem like they're never going to run into each other ever, the more I notice people have like a positive response and get very like ooh, wow, how did you do that? Again, including myself. So the main guy who had his little fedora blown up, he's devastated. He'll never get a fedora like that again. He's about to put an axe in the barber, who is, I applaud him, standing his fucking ground with his little ass out. He has no fears. No underwear either, apparently. And before he can get axed in the head, he gets shoved into a barrel. But it happens so fast, so quickly, that no one even knows who did it. It's truly a feat within itself, and this is when the surreal quality to the movie starts to kick in, because like no one's that fast. And to just shove him in there and break his back, I mean, it's devastating. This is when the main boss, the beginning of the movie, now it's all kind of finally coming full circle, shows up, because I don't think he obviously cares about one of his members being really hurt. He just is like thinks that's crazy that happened, and obviously doesn't want a power dynamic to be shifted. So he threatens an innocent mom and her kid by pouring gasoline on them. He's ready to drop a lighter. Obviously, like, shit's about to go down. And he wants to know who did that. And finally, a man steps forward. I don't know what he would be in the village. I guess just like a regular guy carrying around sacks. We'll call him Sack Man. I'm just kidding. I won't do him dirty like that. But he ends up impressively taking on this really large gang of members. And this is when our first quote-unquote master gets revealed. Now, masters exist in pretty much like every kung fu movie, but I would say if you start to get a surreal element, but let's be real, even the realistic kung fu movies, there's always like some sort of like council or how a particular school or ways of doing things. And so we get this nice little world building set up, and we learn that there are quote unquote masters, like truly to the next level, like beyond knowing your basic level of fighting. They can take on almost supernatural abilities, so to speak. I mean, there he was with the speed and just putting him in there with strength. And so he starts taking on all of these men, and it seems like he's going to be the only guy, and maybe he might not even make it because he's against so many members. And this is what I'm talking about, what it's important when it comes to reveals. When we see a close-up, which is kind of a pretty offensive take on clearly a gay man who is the tailor, he looks like he's cowering in fear and is upset, and a member of the gang gets thrown into his shop, and probably the member of the gang out of like insecurity goes to attack him. And instead of him getting attacked, we see the gang member thrown through the window. But the last thing we saw was the tailor quaking and shivering. And we see him throw his, when you like throw your jacket up on the coat hanger, you're done for the day. He's throwing his little tape measure across the wooden frames. And he does this cool action where he pulls down these wooden poles that are hanging up. And the silver bars, the rings that probably held clothes and stuff for him, fall down from the wooden stakes to his arms, around his forearms, and he becomes the master of Iron Fist. And he starts helping the other guy fighting. So now, weirdly enough, there's another master. I mean, when you first see this movie, you start to wonder, like, can everyone in this village just fight kung fu? That was my first take on it, and I kind of would have loved if that was the case. But no. When the guns get pulled out, that's when our third master is revealed. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about introductions and one of the strengths of this movie. So the guns get pulled out by the gang members because these two men are like basically kicking ass, like too well, to the point that the gang members need some sort of advantage. And they're cheap, that's a big thing in kung fu and karate and all martial arts is like, you're cheap if you use a gun, like you should be able to do it by yourself. And it would be sacrilegious to take someone down that has such talent and put in such time without doing it honorably, so to speak. I always find that's like a common trope in a lot of these movies. And they pull out the guns, and the baker pulls up his bamboo stalk that he was using to blend the bread in the very beginning when we get introduction to the town. Keep in mind, you see him for but a second, and he bitch slaps the guns out of the men's hands and starts beating everyone up who tries to take a gun and just joins in the fight with three masters, like, killing it. And that's what I'm talking about when it comes to the introductions. Like, you get wowed by his impressive ability, but you simultaneously get wowed that there's just now a third person in the fight. You understand how they get introduced. It's a creative way they get introduced rather than all at once or just, I have been moved and now I want to join the fight too and I'm just saying this for no reason in an unrealistic way. It's not stupid like that. You have a difficulty not having your jaw dropped the entire movie, which I love. This is when, and I'm just gonna skim over this real quickly, but like, this is when we learn that their two idiots get their comeuppings because everyone, including the town and the gang, had a lot of trouble handed to them and damage done, and of course they're pissed. So the gang kind of intends to torture these gang members, but unintentionally find out that our main protagonist is great at picking locks, and they kind of let him go because they figure that might be of some use. Maybe they'll even let him join the gang, potentially. And that's when we learn the main characters or main protagonist sings like background story and why he does what he does. We learn that he was younger. He was unfortunately scammed. He didn't know it at the time, but he was sold a 20-cent manual. Being told by some guy he's the chosen one. He has this amazing ability in him, and he spent his whole life savings, which was $10. And considering this was the 40s at the time too, I imagine that was a lot of money, especially for someone who did not come up in money. And he spent his whole life savings to learn the skills and the moves of this little pamphlet. And when he saw a little girl being beat up for her lollipop, he stood up for her. And it was a really nice thing he did, but unfortunately it backfired. The little boys made fun of him and his pamphlet. He learned way too young that he was scammed, which is so sad and unfortunate. And while the little girl was very thankful, he honestly he got peed on afterwards. Like, they went over the top with that bullying scene. And you can understand why he then continues to say, like, I stood up for good, and it didn't mean anything. I realized very quickly the bad guys, they've got the better cars, the better girls. It's better to be bad than be good. You don't get anything for it. And, like, I don't know, that's a pretty good motivation. I can understand why he's not the best at being bad. I mean, he's not that great at being good either. He truly is. He's not good at anything. It's kind of funny. It's one of those situations where, like, he for sure, good thing he's charismatic and you like what he's about, because if he wasn't, I'm already setting up a pitch for you. It's like, why would I care about watching this person go any further in the plot line? Why do they matter to me? But I think the way they set it up is they don't ask you to care about him because he has some defining characteristic trait, but rather he is the puzzle. He is the interlocking chain to these bigger characters. Isn't that kind of funny? He's the protagonist, and really at this point it feels like it's more about the town and their masters and this gang and the trouble they're going through, rather than what journey the Sing's going through. So, kind of a funny. I just had that epiphany right now, which is really cool. Anyways, we then get the aftermath of what the landlady really just gives the masters, yells at them, tells them to leave town because while it seems really cold and she's even chastised, which I loved from her fellow her peers, the people who pay her rent. She basically is like, well, this is only going to incite more drama. I'm sure she's aware of the gang situation is we've been kind of untouched until now, and now that they know we have kind of some sort of defense mechanism, they're going to take that as an insult. They're going to be offended by that, and more people are most likely going to come. You better leave so we don't have to deal with more trouble. And the masters kind of accept it and are like, totally, we don't want to cause more trouble. We're going to leave. Now, I don't know how Sing and his friend got back to the village so quickly, but we get this great little comedic moment of him trying to get revenge on the landlady by throwing a knife, but all the knives they throw keep being accidentally stabbed into Sing's arm. He even gets 2 cobras that bite his lips. The boy is going through hell and back just trying to make some sort of name for himself. And I can't help but, again, have that moment because there is some sort of, fate and destiny built into this, again, very, kung fu movie. But it makes me wonder if fate was literally saying, no, dude, this is not who you are. I'm going to do whatever I can to thwart you. And this is an important scene because it's but a small moment. It's really funny. The landlady goes at rocket speed in her flip-flops after him. What's it called? The what the fuck is it called? The cartoon, the coyote, and the I know you're shouting at the screen. Shout louder. I can't hear you. Anyway, the reason why this scene is important is because so this movie has a very surreal way of doing things, but maybe it is for you now, but it was for me. You have to start wondering at this point when Sing is able to run as fast as she is, if these surreal moments are just, again, surreal and kind of over dramatized to sell the funniness of a situation, or if it's a hint to powers, because the only people at this point that can run really fast or kind of make these crazy leaps and jumps are people with some sort of abilities. It makes you wonder if maybe the woman has abilities. Can she just purely run fast, or is there something more there? And more specifically, how can he run fast? I mean, at this point, part of me just wondered if they were somehow he was her son in some way, because they could both run really quickly. You know what I mean? She didn't know it was her son. Maybe she had to give him up when she was young. That was just a thought that went through my head. But this is when we get kind of a hint and an inkling. And we honestly get even more of that and more of that answered when there's I don't know what the hell this is, but above a traffic light is just this iron ball area. It's almost like an iron tree fort for our main character, who goes there with giant, cartoonish, blown up lips from the cobra, and obviously in deep pain from all the knives. And he's just kind of hitting the surface out of pain, and somehow the knives leave him. He's able to punch through iron, and his lips somehow shrink up. It's a weird, crazy moment that even his friend later is like, what hospital did you go to? How did you heal so fast? And I don't even think he's lying to him because he's hiding anything. I'm sure if he realized anything was wrong, he would for sure use it to his ability. But in that moment, we get kind of a little snippet, a little inkling that something isn't quite as it seems. Now introducing what I like to call the Creep Twins. No, they are not related in any way as I can tell or whatever, but they both have these like iconic John Lennon black glasses. They are two blind musicians that play the instrument the guqin. It's a stringed instrument you put on your lap, and it doesn't have any frets or anything, and the strings are like way off from the board, but that's kind of essentially what it looks like. It's large. It can even sit. You can play it singularly as one person, but it's so large that you can place it along two laps. And I think there's actually something that's like the next level of a guqin. I can't remember. I know it has many more strings, and you have to put on these little metal pickers on your fingertips to play all of them, kind of like a harp, because you aren't just using but one or even three fingers to pick at a time. It's quite complicated and difficult. I actually highly recommend, if you ever are like interested in musical instruments or music in general. I mean, you don't have to be to enjoy this, but there's a museum in Arizona I went to one time called MIM, and the whole thing is only instruments. They have, I think, a collection of up to 20,000 instruments, including some that are incredibly notable, like Liberace's piano and John Lennon's piano and some other musicians. But they have musicians from that are like 1,000 years old to modern day, and they are all organized by years and countries from anywhere in Africa to Eastern Europe to Asia, like everywhere. And they all have a history, but one of the coolest parts about the museum is they went out of their way to, and when I say out of the way, they had to go to some pretty remote areas. They went to these different areas and filmed some of the last people alive who know how to play these super obscure instruments, because some of these instruments are kind of modifications of something else that you might be more familiar with. So there's not that many people left alive. It's almost like the last people left alive speaking a language. And they filmed them playing these instruments, and sometimes there's people dancing in the background or a band of people playing along with that instrument player. And when you get these little headphones at the museum, which I usually never do because I don't want someone talking in my ear when I'm just like relaxing and looking at art, but when you walk towards within like a foot or two of these screens, it subtly comes into your ears, and you can then hear the instruments that you are looking at. So as you walk around the museum, your music keeps changing, and you can stay as long or as short of a time as you want, because it only is playing is in your relationship to it. It's really cool. It's just such a badass museum. I just wanted to throw that in there. You should totally check it out. Going forward, though, we get kind of this sad situation that happens, because these men were hired because the gang are embarrassed. They had their ass handed to them, and they will not have that. If you're like in a gang, most likely it's all about ego, and they send these assassins to go attack these men. Side note, I want to mention that they say a throwaway line that's really important. They mention that they are not the top assassins, that in fact the beast is. That's something that's really cool about this folklore, is they do not want, like, people are very aware of their rankings. They care about who is above and below them, because it's fun to know your skill level and if you can improve, if you are capable of beating them, so on and so forth. And apparently this beast was so great at kung fu, so skilled, he kind of went mad from it, and he's now currently in an asylum. And so in a way they're now the top assassins, and I love their response. They say, technically we're musicians. So we get this like wonderful and beautiful and kind of horrific introduction to how they kill and what they're about and their hidden way of going about things, and in kind of an unfortunate timely end. So what happens is the three men, the masters, kind of have a cute moment where they joke about, oh, we'll leave. Bye. See, it's so nice to have met you. Maybe we should spar one last time. No, no. And then they have a fun spar moment, and then they kind of admire each other. It's like a beautiful little sweet moment of being like, wow, we lived near each other this whole time and didn't know. And then, as they're leaving and going their separate places and maybe packing up, they encounter one of these assassins at a time. It's so unfortunate. you hear the beautiful music of the what was it called? A gu quin, and as it's playing, you see the shadow of a bamboo brush being cut in half as the master is walking away. It's kind of, I mean, I love cats, so this was dark as hell for me to see, but it's also kind of funny that they choose to show a cat being sliced in half. And before the master can do anything, somehow, by this musician playing his instrument, his head gets decapitated. It's interesting when they show the gore and when they don't in the movies, and I love the choice of them not showing it, so you just get the spooky element of, like, you don't really quite know what happened to him. Because, again, things are done with such speed in this universe, you never quite know who it is or what it is. Like, did he have time to put down the instrument and then run over there very quickly? This person's truly silent and deadly, and its victims do not see him coming. The other man, we learn that they are not purely musician-based. They do actually know how to fight with their hands. They're very long, creepy fingernails. I don't know how he doesn't break those, I might add. he's got a nail routine like you wouldn't believe. And he ends up fighting with the tailor, who is much quicker and savvier and puts up a good fight. But when he goes out into the street to meet the other guy, I really like how they fight. They do this crazy thing where they sit in the air with no chair under them and one foot crossed over to create kind of a pedestal, and the two of them do this together and synchronize. It's really fun to see them fighting with a fucking instrument. And as they play this instrument, it sends out these like invisible spiritual swords. Like somehow they're able to probably bend the chi or the energy of the universe and make air deadly, so to speak, with their abilities. And honestly, at the level of playing that they're doing and the speed, it's just too much for someone who can't. I mean, it's already hard to fight someone throwing a knife at you, let alone a bunch of invisible ones. And the last two masters do whatever they can to put up a fight, but unfortunately, they are just, like, they're being taken down. It's so, so sad. But while this might be a really sad moment, and again, it does successfully portray that idea, meanwhile, the landlady keeps sticking her head out and saying, like, you guys are being too loud, shut up! And the husband keeps bringing her back in and closing the doors and being like, we're not involved, leave it alone, don't worry, you can go about your business. And they keep popping back out, and at one point she even says, he's like, I don't, we don't want to die. And she goes, how can I die with all this racket? But right at the moment between this weird parallel of comedy and then sadness going on, the woman, the landlady, screams such a boisterous yell of saying, like, you have put us and our town through so much, when will you leave it alone? Leave us the fuck alone, basically. The two musicians throw down their instrument and they jump in the air. And this is when we get yet another fucking twist. They jump up and they say, another master is here. And I loved it. I got chills the first time I heard that. I was like, what? I already know what you mean when you say master, so I'm fucking pumped. Who's here? Who's here? And all of a sudden, before they could jump up in the air, because they jump up in the air, they're going to head towards the landlord and landlady's place. They are brought down to their feet. They are very confused. They look to each other, and they see the landlord, the once drunken and silly and seems like he can't do anything for himself landlord, very casually and smug, great expression on his face, great face to go from comedic to serious. And he's just in his PJs, in his little silk PJs, his hair's pinned back, he had his own little perm routine just like his wife, and he's sitting there between them with his arms around. And I take this in that moment as him protecting her. You know what I mean? Like, she's mad, she's yelling, and before they can be attacked, he protected her. And so we get introduced to his way of fighting, and his is so unique. It's kind of funny I mentioned earlier about Jackie Chan in the Drunken Master movie, because he almost fights like that. He's like a rubber band, because when he gets punched, he does get punched, but somehow he doesn't take any of the impact, and it bounces off of him and smacks the other guy in the face. And before they know it, these two men who are giving it their all are weirdly now fighting each other through this middleman, and he's able to slip and dive in a way that is not possible. But that's what I love about this movie is the edge they keep pushing with reality. Like, I feel like in this world, the better you are, the wackier your fighting is because you have to be very creative. That's something I really love with fighting in general. I personally have always a long-term passion of mine is I would love to one day learn how to fight like that. I don't know when I'm gonna do that. I don't know when I'm gonna find the time or the money or the ability to get punched and just take it. But I've always admired people who have this ability, and one of the things about it is it's more than just knowing how to punch or take a punch, it's being able to have to think on your feet in a split second, and take everything you know and do it almost in a manner where you don't think about it anymore, kind of like a language. You can't stop anymore and think about the translations or the definitions. You have to just do it with as if it's your native tongue. And that's so weird to teach your body to be able to do the same. That's pretty much, I would consider that's most of the work that goes into fighting is more than just how to fight, but being able to do it as if, it's your second language or first language rather. So he's fighting them. He's doing these crazy, surreal dip and flow techniques. And there's a moment where he is about to be attacked with, they bring up their instruments. They restring their instruments, and they're about to attack him with more. I love that it went from silent and non-existent knives to you start to see them. There's a specific name for it, by the way. Those knives are big in places like Morocco and stuff like that. I cannot think of what the knife is called. It's also in Breath of the Wild. Does anyone play Breath of the Wild? I love that damn game. The Gororo, or is it the Gordo? It's where all the ladies are. You know what I'm talking about. Anyways, it goes from these big knives to skeleton soldiers, and I love that. So you kind of get an idea that they're working with spirits to be able to convey their powers and abilities. And this huge army is going towards the husband, and like how the husband defended the wife then defends the husband, and we learn, again, another beautiful twist. Again, people are revealed during circumstances, not weird, out-of-place introductions. And so she jumps in front of the knives, she takes this epic suck-in where her cigarette gets fully inhaled in one blow. I don't know how she's not coughing that shit up real quick. That's a lot of nicotine, girl. Maybe when she needs her fix real quickly. Sometimes people go outside and they take 2 puffs from their cigarette. She's like, I'm not wasting this cigarette. She takes a big inhale and she sucks in and she blows out this enormous loud breath that destroys their clothing, beats them up, destroys their instruments, and they run away terrified, even screaming about the lion's roar. I heard that was a myth. That's a big thing in this, is that there's secret abilities and talents, kind of like Kung Fu Panda, which, by the way, I know this is a side tangent, I really... maybe that will be my 100th episode. Oh, maybe! Okay. Okay, get ready for that, guys. But, Kung Fu Panda is, by the way, an underrated trilogy. I'm saying that with complete seriousness. But in Kung Fu Panda, they talked about certain moves having a surreal element. And because of how long fighting has existed across many martial arts, some of these things have probably gotten lost in time. And probably because even if you hear about them, it's rare that you would even be able to learn the technique and be able to master it. So therefore it gets lost in history because there's not enough people mastering it and then, passing it along the generations. Just food for thought there. So you can understand on another level how impressive it is that someone just knows an ability you're unaware of. So now we have it revealed that there's 3 masters. Unfortunately, they all got really hurt or died. We have the 2 I'm so sorry. What was it called again? The Guqin musician assassin masters, but they run away. They're scared. And then we get revealed finally that the landlord and landlady this whole fucking time could have saved the town, but they didn't. But now they're done because she jumped in not only to save her husband, but she looked down and she saw the 2 other men that she had known. She might have been, but this is what I'm talking about when I say lovable mom and dad. They might yell and fight amongst each other or even with their quote unquote kids, aka the town, but do not fuck with their family. Do not fuck with their little ecosystem. Do not even fuck with each other's loved ones. Because, like, even when he's being silly and kind of clearly way too flirtatious and peeping Tom, he loves his wife and vice versa. And so, I love that move, too, by the way, when there's, like, a point when they're, like, before the masters get, like, attacked and everything, they're just, like, dancing. And they're just dancing to music. And then I don't know what happens, but she just starts beating the shit out of him for no reason with her flip-flop. It makes you wonder if they really let loose and had a real fight amongst each other just casually. Good thing they don't, and they're aware of their powers. But they go and they see that the gang members have been watching from afar because, again, so much ego's in the way. Shows how ego just bites your ass time and time again. I mean, that's how the first guy, Singh, got everyone involved, was the ego. And they end up slipping into the car silently. It's so great. They're going to leave. The gang members are terrified. But when his lackey turns up front, he sees the husband, and then he turns next to him, and kind of like how the husband entered between the two players, the musicians, the wife's there between the two of them. And I love, she doesn't even say anything. She just has a new cigarette in her mouth. She puts her finger up, she cracks her knuckles, and she makes it clear, being like, you fucking stay away from our town and us, or I will fuck you up. It's so great. It's amazing. And we get kind of this great conversation and reveal because why didn't they help? Why did they have all of this ability and keep it to themselves? They even, unfortunately, all three of the men die, so all three of those wonderful masters. And I always get sad when anyone dies, because I always just think about what it took for a human to exist, but especially in this moment when people have talent. I don't mean to define people and their worth by a talent. Not at all. I don't feel that in the least, but it is still really sad to see someone be so skilled at something and kind of you feel like that skill and ability and potential is just gone. And it's so sad to see three of these masters, even only just recently met each other and got to fight probably for the first time in a while and have a great time, just die. And of course, mom and dad of the town, landlord and landlady, are devastated and they're crying. And they explain, like, everyone has their reasons for not talking about why they have. I mean, even the masters themselves that died, they didn't say anything to the town the whole time. There's a reason why they gave it up. I mean, they even admitted themselves it was a secret, and we never know why. For the landlord and landlady, they said, we have our reasons. Fighting doesn't, revenge doesn't get you anywhere. And they even admit, like, they had a son who died in fighting, and it, to this day, it devastates them. They, give each other a sweet, kiss on the cheek each. You really love them and feel for them. And it devastates them to see their town hurt, but, like, this is what happens when you, like, fighting kind of only leads to more fighting. And that's something is kind of made me think, well, maybe I'll bring this up. I'll bring this up in a second, and it'll all kind of come together. But I'm just putting that out there. We get kind of like a funny moment too, by the way, because they're like, okay, one of the townspeople, the barber, I think it is like, well, teach one of us how to fight and then we'll fight for you, which is a great argument. But she goes, no, Kung Fu takes many years to learn. You'd have to be natural born for it to work. And this guy does this kind of somewhat impressive little maneuver and he's like, I'm the one to learn. And then she just punches him in the face. and she goes, no, I don't think so. Like, poor dude, he got punched in the face. And basically that's a little summary of where the town's unfortunately at. Now, we also get a little background story I might add, because like I said, this movie has it all. It decides to not slope down on anything. They do a great job throwing in a slight little romance, so to speak, because when the main guy Singh decided to be a bad guy, you understood his reasoning, and he never saw that girl again and supposedly thought about her. But at some point, he runs into a girl at an ice cream shop, and he steals her ice cream. And he runs away on the train, and she runs after him. And you think she's running after him because he stole her ice cream. But no. By the way, that part, I have to point out this part specifically because it's so fucking funny to me. When she's having this tragic connecting moment. It's clearly very, like, she's clearly sentimentally connecting to something. It's very sweet. And he's, like, on a train with ice cream in his mouth. First of all, he's a grown man who stole ice cream, a cone of ice cream. It's like SpongeBob in the fucking balloon. And he's like, with this, like, ice cream in his mouth, and he's laughing all dumb. And she's having this whimsical, mournful moment. Well, later, he goes to steal money from her. And when he does this beautiful dip, and he holds a knife to her. And I love when they pull out and you see a poster behind them that mimics the same pose, kind of like foreshadowing some sort of romance, but just cool looking, cool metaphor and everything. And he gets the money from her, and they're going to steal money from her. Fucked up again. They're attacking some random innocent person, their little ice cream truck. But she ends up pulling out something else, and she's doing sign language, and he's slowly taking in the moment. It's clicking into the gears of his head what this symbol is for. And she opens up a box, and there's a lollipop inside, and we learn she is but the very girl he protected from bullying. And now he is mugging her. It's like some dark full circle, and yet she doesn't take this as pure sadness of like what he's done. Maybe to a certain regard, she's still pulling for that good person in him. Again, it's like the universe and fate will not let him be removed from the person he once was. She won't give up on him, even though he's mugging her right then. But he can't take it, and he decides to pretend he doesn't know her. He's haunted by this, in fact, this memory, and it's kind of the first time he has to really like ask himself, is this worth it truly? Do you want to be this person? Are you proud of the person you've become? And that's just like an important little love connection going on. So he ends up deciding to be mean and tell his friend to, fuck off, which is sad. But he gets an opportunity from the gang boss of the Axe Gang, and he basically is going to be their chum, their yuppie, unfortunately. And they want him to break the beast out of the asylum because the gang will not take no for an answer. They're still upset. They keep having their ass beat, and to them it's war. So they're dumb and they want to break out the beast. And they have him do it because he's good at picking locks. And honestly, if he dies in the process, who gives a shit as far as they're concerned? So he gets out the beast. By the way, again, love the beast introduction. He's on the toilet reading the newspaper. He is not a very stylish old man. He is he is a very bald, glasses, flip-flops, dirty white tank top guy. He does not seem to live up to the name the Beast, so to speak. So the gang boss, I keep calling him the gang boss. The boss of the gang wants to see his abilities. And initially, he doesn't give a shit about showing them. He really, truly doesn't care. He's a great example, ironically. I've been talking about ego this whole time. He really doesn't have ego. He even says, I'll fight these people for free if you give me a good match, but I won't do it otherwise. Because he's not someone who just wants to kill to kill. He's been fighting his whole life to find an adversary. First, it's a slow build-up, but eventually he shows his true monstrous ability, his ability to take a punch and everything. And again, with beautiful transitions in this movie, he does this epic punch that kind of like how the musicians kick a line, a spiritual wave, a line, a wind with their musical instruments. The power of his kick creates a wind and a power surge from his strength from hitting the floor that cuts through the rooms and reveals this side room that has a gambling ring that everyone else leaves except the two. And I love their outfit change and how they look. The landlord and the landlady. And this is not a coincidence of him sensing them or coincidence that they're even in the next room. In fact, it's so great because the Beast doesn't care anymore about the boss guy. He doesn't give a shit at this point. They're out of the way. He doesn't care as far as he's concerned. He's just excited that he can sense other masters. That's how good he is, that they didn't even make a sound. In fact, there was quite a lot of noise going along, and they were even in another room, but he could sense they were there, and he's excited. And technically, those are the people he needs to fight, but he's not a dog on a leash. Hell no. He is off the leash. He's doing what he wants, and he even politely and not in a creepy way. I mean, it is somewhat creepy, but he just genuinely is like excited that these people are there. We learn that the landlord and the landlady are known as the fated lovers, which is so fun and cute because they clearly are in love, and that they're kind of renowned in their abilities. They're clearly very, they're up there, and no wonder they. I mean, the two musicians may have not known about them, but they quickly learned they are below their ranking of these two members. So they're excited and they throw in a good fight. I felt that this one fight could have been a little bit more climactic and interestingly done. I don't think it was the worst done. I love the big ending with the funeral bell and how she's like, you are going to meet your fate. This is your fate. I loved her with that. But we get to see that when they throw punches on the beast, one thing that's truly terrifying about him before his actual ability is the fact that, like, he is untouched. You cannot punch him. You cannot hurt him. You can't do anything to him. He is, you get what I'm saying. He ends up almost beating them to a pulp, and he gets them and they get him in a three conjoined interlock. Like, no one, it's a stalemate, so to speak. And this is when the movie has one of its most pivotal, important moments. It's weird. It's like our protagonist isn't even our protagonist the whole movie. It feels like it's more about the landlord and the landlady and the boss in this gang. But this is his moment when he shines, and you realize how he was meant to be the star of this film, how it's all going to line up beautifully together. He has an opportunity the boss man gives him. He says, hit the wife and the husband, hit him in the head, get rid of them. Be dirty, who gives a shit about honor in this fighting and who's going to win in stalemate? Just get rid of them. But instead of hitting the other two members, he hits the main guy, the beast. And it's weird. It's you kind of don't even know why, but he chooses to do it. It doesn't have an effect on the guy. The guy punches his face into the ground to a pulp, to almost death. And even when he's near death, he somehow isn't dead, and he lightly hits him in the head again. Even the guy asks, why did you hit me in the head? Even he's confused. Not because I don't even know if he's so mad that he got hit in the head, but he's just even confused. Like, didn't you fucking break me out? Didn't you hire me? What the hell's going on? Why? Like, I kind of wonder if he in that moment could sense fate, could sense something important happening, and that's what, enticed him the most. But, again, very quick, very sly. We get this great moment when one person looks here and the couple is gone. Then you look down and they've been gone. And we learn that the couple have saved him. They even they go and they do some acupuncture and a bunch of other things to save him. And they make a comment saying, like, this is the one good thing in his life, but even we are confused. Why did he save us? Then they wonder, he did take that punch. He does seem to heal rather quickly. He looks like if he might even make it, and anybody in any other circumstance would die. Like, maybe could it be that he is special? That he is what we just, again, like I said in this movie, they lightly hint to something, and they do a good job of naturally bringing it up where you are somewhat surprised. Is he the fated natural learning? Fuck me and my words. Does he have this natural ability to be a fighter? So, beautifully done, and surprisingly, it's kind of almost a Coen's brother movie. The boss, the head of this gang, gets murdered. He gets his head twisted off by the Beast. And not because the Beast wants to run the gang, but he's kind of done with the annoyance of the boss, and he wants to go after these members because he never walks away from a fight. He wants to finish this shit. And he's enticed. He's excited. And when he comes into this encounter, Sing himself presents himself. I love how he puts the couple down. He tells them, like, again, very mother and father, like, I've got this now, guys. And we learn that he had this ability in him all along. He's truly fated to be this amazing, like it's the last final quarter, or whatever you want to say in sports terms, and he was meant to be the guy, which they usually reveal the hero way earlier on. The whole thing is about him being a hero and being amazing. I kind of love that they saved it for the very end, for almost comedic purposes too. And that when the Beast beat him up and attacked him, it unlocked his chi, and that's what was blocked, which makes sense because some of it was for sure blocked when he went through this moral, ethical dilemma. And isn't that so funny? Like, I mean, there's a reason why movies go out of their way to talk about subjects that tend to reflect life. I think a lot of us lose our way from our true path because some devastating reality that, reforms our opinions. We think, oh, maybe nothing ever does work out, or maybe people aren't to be trusted. In reality, it is whatever you want to make it. It is all about perspective. If you don't want that, which most people don't want to experience that type of life, then you can keep looking. You can choose to not let that moment define you, which is not like a bad thing. I'm not like criticizing that. But for him, it defined him, like many of us it does. And this was his moment. It unblocked something. He got out of his own way. So he ends up being this epic fighter. He's able to actually land punches on the beast, which is, again, they've shown you what the stakes are. They keep doing a great job of building that up. I think that's what makes it stand out as a kung fu movie, that, like, how do I put this? When I show you a kung fu movie and I show you someone can punch, you've got to feel like it's impressive. You hear either a snap, a punch, or in this way that the story tells it, it's how they develop and show you people's abilities in measurements. So it's a lot of like, okay, we get to know this one gang member is controlling the police, but oh my god, the police are not only scared of them, but there's a higher up gang. That's where we get the Axe gang members. We learn that there's masters and that they are stronger than this huge giant gang that can take up all these people. But in fact, there's even stronger masters than them, and even stronger than them. And then you meet a guy who doesn't seem like he can be down by anyone, and you see him get punched in the face. At that point, they just keep doing a great job of successfully raising up the stakes. I know I've said that a million times in this podcast, apologies, but they just keep raising that level over and over and over again. And the ending is so pivotal, so amazing. I mean, you wonder how they can top it, finish it. Well, at a certain point, he gets punched. Sing does by the beast. And he goes up in the air. And because this couldn't be more over the top yet, I felt like this was the most metal moment to happen. He steps on an eagle in the sky, launches himself up higher. He sees a cloud looking like Buddha. And in that moment, he takes on the knowledge of, I wrote down, the palm move that falls from heaven, or the long-lost Buddhist palm. And as he falls down to earth, his clothes tear away. By the way, just his shirt beautifully, not his pants, of course. We can't have that. But I would love if he just came down like Willie in the Breeze, like pants, shirt gone from, and re-entering the atmosphere like he is. And there's flames around him, and his palm is outstretched. And as he's pushing down, his power, his energy shooting down, is forcing the beast into the ground, and there's like literally a palm-shaped handprint in the ground. It's so over the top. And as he's being pushed down, the beast is about to be murdered, killed, smothered. He says, "I surrender!" So honorably, Sing stops. Delicately lands to the side, because now he can fly now, of course. And he lands down. He allows that to be the end of it. But Sneaky the Beast, this is when you're at that moment where you're like, oh, come on, dude. When push comes to shove, like, have you lost your way? You're all about fighting the best fighter, and you kind of are being, what's the word? Like, when you don't follow the rules, you're not being like, you get what I'm saying. He pulls out this thing that actually he had hurt the landlord and landlady with, which was a kind of a stabbing thing with a poisonous stick, like metal stick, and it opens up inside of like a lotus flower. So if you had this metal contraption opened up in you, it would really tear and flesh out the wounds and not be easy to take out. But successfully, Sing puts up his hand, recreates the Buddhist palm, but beautifully, he doesn't do it to him and just execute him. No, he does it right next to his face. You see a handprint behind him in the distance, cutting through the building. By the way, they skim over this, but like, how many fucking people died in that apartment complex? Those poor people. I bet you the people of this town are not like, yay, he's our hero. They're like, because of you, we have died and been hurt And so many of our people have been killed because of your stupid influence, Sing. We hate you, Sing. Well, he does the boost palm trick. This scares the shit out of the beast. And he takes the lotus flower, he removes the pin, he opens it up, and he spins it away, and it's beautiful. And in that moment, the beast casually says, after almost dying and almost attempting to kill him again like the scoundrel he is, he says, how did you learn that move? Just kind of casually, kind of like just talking casually. And he turns around and he goes, if you want, I'll teach you. He looks at him, at Sing. And I think they did I don't know, they said so much with just a simple moment. He looks at him, and he's all shadow. You could barely see Sing's face. You can barely see the sun peeking from over his head. And you get this silent moment, his hair waving in the wind. And the beast just cries master and bends down. It's so beautiful. I mean, truly, doesn't that define a whole being? Not only with such power and grace, but I keep talking about honor because that's a big thing. I feel like if you can get over your fucking ego and see the bigger picture, and it's not about playing by the rules just to be a quote-unquote good person. Being a good person is beyond just doing something that benefits, like, humanity, but understanding that if humanity benefits and understanding togetherness and just understanding the one, you're understanding a bigger picture in life, and therefore, if you want to be selfish, you're understanding what you can benefit from it personally. You get what I'm saying? Like, and he, by saying, even though he almost killed him, being like, I'll even teach it to you. I'm not even worried about it if it's in the wrong hands. Just like this sense of like oneness that you can feel he knows something you don't. I love the beast finally cries, and I think he gets what he's been wanting all along. He truly went, I mean, he even said that he was in the asylum. He allowed himself to be in the asylum or wanted to be in the asylum because he was like bored, no one was left to fight, whatever, I'll just hang out. But in reality, he never lost that love and urge to fight. And there's a sense of tear in his eyes when he kind of feels a sense of enlightenment being around someone who's enlightened. I don't even know if the beast would be truly happy being enlightened and being like fully understanding fighting to the next level. I mean, in a way he did, but I think he'll always thirst and hunger for that journey, and he never thought that was going to be satiated. That's why it made me realize, like, in this world, Kung Fu is almost like a weird drug. It is super addictive, and you never feel like you get an answer. And the ones who give it up after experiencing it after a while have the true peace because they understand what it leads to, while other people who just can't get enough, want more, just like a drug in this case, it ends up biting them in the ass. And they find, like, but to be honest, like not many of us have had an experience where, like, usually if you do too much cocaine, that fucks you over. You either OD or it hurts your life in some way. You rarely get a point with cocaine where you're like, I know, cocaine gave me what I finally wanted. I'm finally off the drug because I've experienced the perfect level of this drug. But you hear what I'm saying. Anyways, I know this was a bit long. Oh, and the end is cute because Sing and his friend get back together. They're working at a candy shop, which is super cute. He runs into the girl. They run to each other and hold hands, and we see little versions of themselves. It's almost like they find their inner version of themselves. It's a little sweet romantic moment. That's like a side note. But the reason why I went so long-winded with this podcast is how unbelievably good this movie is. You can keep tearing it apart. I mean, honestly, if I wanted to, I could make a 3-hour podcast out of this and keep breaking down the metaphors and analogies I kept seeing. But overall, you don't need to notice those. You can certainly appreciate them. But I'm not kidding when I say you have to go watch this movie. And it is on Netflix right now. Have I sold it to you enough? It's amazing. If you like this podcast, it would help me out so much if you gave it a 5-star review on iTunes or subscribe to whatever platform you're on. For sure, please tell me, what you think of this movie. I had a great couple of discussions with some people when I reviewed the Jackie Chan movie. So feel free to contact me on Twitter. It's in the link description below. I love talking to you guys. I've had some great conversations with some of you guys lately, and I'm always down for it. So throw me your requests, throw me your opinions, and have a beautiful day. I love you in the most platonic way possible.